Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another discussion. This is STG Filmmakers, man. I appreciate you guys tuning in. And today I'm not going to have the phone sitting in front of the air conditioner vent. We learn from our lessons, you know what I'm saying? At least we try to. But today's topic for discussion, man, is basically how us filmmakers or video content creators, how there seems to be like this craze to build out cameras that are just have the same form factor as like older ENG or just regular cinema cameras, you know what I mean? Like the old box rectangle shape. Now the thing is, there's no problem with that. I'd much rather have the, you know, square form factor myself. Obviously, you know, I mean, if you've been around this channel even for a little bit, you know I like to build cameras out to have a better form factor, right? To have more of a usable form factor when it comes to capturing documentary style filmmaking, even to just do my music videos and just basically do any video content that I'm doing. But lately I've been kind of thinking to myself, why are we doing this? Like, why do we keep taking cameras like the FX3, the FX30 as independent film creators and building them out to be, or look like at least, an FX6, an FS5, an FS7 Mark II, Komodo, Ursa, basically, right? Like if you look at Cineback and you look at, what's that other one? I forget the name of it, but I'll put it up on the screen here. Essentially what this is doing is this is turning your camera into the same form factor as an FX6, FX5, FS5. And it costs $400 or $500 for you to do this because you got to buy a cage. You have to buy a cage. These kits are designed to work with cages, specific type cages in some instances. And on top of that, you got to get the cables, you got to get V-mount batteries, you have to get dummy batteries to connect to the D-tap. It's just like, look, man, I'm just getting to the point to where I like simple stuff, bro. I like simple stuff. I like simple stuff. I like I'm just gonna put the lens on and let's go, right? Let's go. Everything's all in one, bro. To me, the Cineback kits and all that stuff, it doesn't necessarily solve my main issue when it comes to me specifically liking the form factor that cinema cameras have or ENG style cameras have. And to me, one of the main things is, boom, ND filter. Where's it at? You still don't have ND filters built in with these kits, so that's out the window. If you take a look at the side of these cameras, they're specifically designed so that you have easy access to video settings that you don't have to dig into menus for. You feel what I'm saying? So if I put that kit on my FX3, my FX30, that doesn't solve that problem, right? The kit doesn't have extra buttons on the side that magically attach themselves to specific video settings within the camera. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't just turn my zebras on and my zebras off, or my waveform monitor on, waveform monitor off with just one button. Like I said, there's no ND. Okay, you got custom buttons on the FX3, FX30, but you're limited. There's only like 3 or 4, right? I have a plethora of buttons on the side of the Canon C300 that I use constantly. One of the main buttons I use is auto white balance. Okay, so what this camera does essentially is this 12-year-old camera, I can point it at my scene, push auto white balance, it figures out what the white balance is for the scene, and it's not 100%. Okay, I will admit that. It has issues trying to figure out what white balance should be in the sunset and in the clouds and stuff like that. But for the most part, I'd probably say 95% of the time, it knows what's going on. And if it doesn't, it'll dial you in pretty close, and then you can just manually kind of figure it out for yourself. But you don't have that option with like a Sony FX30 to where you can just push a button, it figures out the scene, and then it just locks it in place. It locks the white balance in that specific scene that you just evaluated, or whatever you want to call it. Matter of fact, I don't know really any cameras that do that aside from this camera. This is the only camera I've had that does that. We're buying extra accessories to attach XLR inputs into the camera, which is that's an additional cost to the FX3, FX30 if you want, you know, built-in or whatever you want to call it. It's not necessarily built-in, but it's an added-on accessory for dual XLR mic inputs for the FX3, FX30. FS5s, FS5 Mark II, FS, they all have that already. FX6, it all has that built into the camera. Why are we building out cameras to basically do the exact same thing that other cameras already do, is the question. That's my question to myself. You guys are just kind of just following along on the journey, and you just clicked on this video. But essentially, I'm asking myself, like, look, why get an FX30, build it out, which is a small form factor, right? The reason why you would get an FX30 is because of the small form factor. And now I'm taking it, right? And I'm building it out into this big thing like this, when I could just buy the big thing and just be done with it, right? I could just buy the big thing. I can just buy the C300 Mark II. Everything's included, bro. Everything is included in the C300 Mark II. You don't need to add on anything to it unless you're trying to capture RAW, which I went through my RAW thing. I'm done with it. I'm good with just flat profiles. And if I'm being 100% honest with you, I don't even film in C-Log on the C300. I film in YDR and I export it. And for the main part, I import it, I do my cuts, and basically I just export it, because the footage that you get from YDR out the Canon C300 is basically like just touch and go. YDR on the Canon C300 is basically the look that I try to get out of any camera that I shoot with. And so if there's a camera that already exists, that already shoots looking like that in camera while I'm capturing it, I'm gonna go with that. FS5 Mark II. Let's talk about the FS5 Mark II. I like the FS5 Mark II because Sony was kind of realizing at that point in time, look, let's stop making add-ons and different updates that people have to pay for in order to get installed into their FS5, and let's just come out with another version of the camera and let's clean it up a little bit, and let's just give them everything in one camera. Okay, so you got the RAW, you got the high frame rates, you have all the bells and whistles that you have the option to get with the FS5, but then you have it already built in the FS5 Mark II, and they're saying that it has they're saying that the color science is updated. I don't know, I can't vouch for that. I don't have an FS5 yet. I'm looking at an FS7, FS5. Here's the talking point that tipped the scales for me to not buy an FX30 or an FX3, build it out into like a cinema rig and all that stuff. Here's what tipped the scales for me not to do that. Number one, no built-in NDs, okay? Look, I've been shooting on cameras with built-in NDs now for too long, and I can't. Somebody drove their weed eater on the street. I can't go back to shooting on a camera with no NDs, no built-in NDs. I can't do it. Okay, I have to shoot on my A camera. Okay, if I have a C camera and it has no NDs, that's fine. Okay, I'm not that prissy. Two, the second reason is that I can purchase an FS5 Mark I even. Let's just say I went on the low end and was like, okay, FS5 Mark I for $800 on Adorama. $800 to $900 on Adorama. I could get two of them for less than $2,000. That's the cost of one FX30. Actually, that's less than the cost of one FX30 and turning it into a cinema camera. That costs more than having two FS5s. To me, that's not very cost efficient, man. I'd much rather have two angles, have two shots, than have one shot. And those two shots are coming from, by the way, a pretty high-end production ENG style camera. It's a high performance camera. It gets the job done. It produces a great image, which brings me to my last talking point, which is if you can't produce a good film on an FS5 or an FS7, what's an FX3 gonna do? What's an FX30 gonna do? That's not gonna be the thing that tips the scales, that says that your film is a great film, or your documentary is a great documentary, or your wedding film is a great wedding film, or, you know, your wedding film was good, but since you shot it on an FS5 and not an FX3, it's not as good as it could be. No, once you get past a certain level of camera, it kind of really doesn't matter. You can take an F55, an F5, an F3. You can take Sony FS5 Mark 1, 2, FS7. You can take an original Blackmagic, the little tiny looking weird one. You could take that. You could take a Canon 90D, a Canon 5D Mark III, Mark IV. Once you get past a certain level of camera, GH4, GH5, once you get into that realm of, okay, the camera is now like, you know, at least within this decade or so, it don't really matter, man. Like if you can't produce a good story with a GH4, what makes you think your story will magically pop by getting a GH7?